World government, California banning gas-powered vehicles, the peace agreement update, President Trump's pro-life stance, school choice, digital currencies ready for launch, and the mark of the beast. All in the news today. Join me for another edition of End of the Age. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Dave Robbins with Endtime Ministries. Thank you for joining me on this edition of End of the Age. You know, there's so many prophecies converging at the same time. It's really pretty hard to keep up with it all. I mean, I wish we had a 2 or 3 hour segment so I could give you guys, and me and Irvin could give you guys an update on everything going on every day. But I know that's not possible. But I'll do my best to get you up to speed on a lot of things today. There's no way I could just do one subject. I mean, there's so many things going on. So let's dive off into it. World government. Revelation chapter 13, verse 1 and 2, John said, "And I stood upon the sand of the sea and saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads, 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns, and upon his heads the name of blasphemy. And the beast," which would be the world government, if you understand prophecy, "the beast which John saw was like unto a leopard," Germany, feet is the feet of the bear, Russia, mouth is the mouth of a lion, Great Britain, "and the dragon," or Satan, "gave him his seat, power, and great authority." The effort towards a world government in the earth today is driven by Satan himself. It's spiritual, but he's setting up his physical kingdom here on the earth. So, just a few updates. French President Emmanuel Macron, he spoke before the United Nations General Assembly yesterday. Emmanuel Macron is the, if you had a dictionary and you looked up the word globalist, I would be surprised if Emmanuel Macron's picture wasn't there. He is a globalist, totally sold out to world government, believes Europe should be is the model of world government, and sold out. In his speech yesterday, he said, and I'm quoting, "The fourth priority," he gave several priorities, 5 priorities in his speech towards the what the world should be doing and moving towards a process of globalization. Further into that, but he said the 4th priority is the construction of a new era of globalization. The first era of globalization began with the voyages of Christopher Columbus and Magellan, and then the second era was the colonial empires and the Industrial Revolution in the 19th century. The third he says, began in 1989 with the fall of the Berlin Wall and the opening of borders. Now, he's talking about the process of globalization. Well, we know that as well. We know that in 1989, we teach that, you know, the third trumpet, the Chernobyl nuclear accident in 1986, the 5th trumpet, the Iraq war with Saddam Hussein, and then with the tearing down of the Berlin Wall, the beginning of the process of globalization and moving into the New World Order. We've taught that for years, that it happened in 1989. Well, Emmanuel Macron, in his speech at the United Nations yesterday, said that the third effort towards this was the Berlin Wall and the opening of borders in 1989. And we've been teaching that for years. But then he said, but total dependency on certain powers regarding technology, food, or now I could make a whole program out of the 4th trumpet, 1989, the process of globalization. I chose not to do that today because there's so much happening. I wanted to cover many things, but that right there, that's miraculous for him to say in his speech yesterday at the United Nations, hey, one of the major moves, the fourth major move towards a process of globalization, 1989, the tearing down of the Berlin Wall, and the opening of borders around the world. Been teaching that for years. I don't want to just slide over that, but I've got so much I want to cover today. So he goes on to say that it creates vulnerabilities that no longer allow us to maintain the balances that are part of the world order. He's at the seat of world government in the earth, the United Nations, and he's talking about the liberal international order, the world order, the process of globalization. One of the major moves towards that was 1989. Irvin Baxter has been teaching this for literally decades now. Emmanuel Macron stands at the United Nations General Assembly, gives his speech yesterday. He walks right down what we've been teaching for years now. He goes on to say that next, the inequalities of this new international order have become unsustainable. So he's pushing world government is what he's doing. He's a globalist, believes in world government. He goes on to say it is possible to sustainably achieve the conditions for a new world balance. He's saying that we're really not where we want to be, but here's what we need to do. Here's the points we need to move towards the sustainability of this new world order that we want to achieve. He's talking about the world government prophesied 2,000 years ago in Revelation chapter 13 and other places in the Bible. We're watching it happen right here in 2020.
Major internet companies are silencing and censoring Christian voices online. These companies are trying to control what you see and hear. Almost 200 videos of ours have been marked as restricted online right now. That's why we launched End of the Age Plus, a platform where the truth won't be censored, a platform where we can preach the message of the gospel. When you subscribe to End of the Age Plus today for just $12.99 a month, you can watch all of our content in a secure, easy-to-view way from your favorite device. When you go to watch.endtime.com and subscribe, you'll get instant access to all of our teaching resources, including Revelation, the Unveiling of Jesus Christ, Understanding the End Time, End Time Magazine, and so much more. We will not censor our message to comply with what the world deems as politically correct. Go to watch.endtime.com right now or search End of the Age Plus in the App Store or Google Play.
We've seen Bible prophecy fulfilled like never before. From the halls of the United Nations to the Temple Mount in Jerusalem, End Time Ministries continues to reveal the Bible prophecy in the news headlines around the world every day. Whether it's through our broadcast or online at our Jerusalem Prophecy College, your gifts enable us to put vital materials in the hands of those who need it most. Because of you, we continue to replace fear with faith in the hearts of Christians around the world. We will continue to see prophecy come to pass at an even swifter pace. We need your support. Your donation of any amount enables us to continue to broadcast and be a voice in the ever-growing censored media. To become a partner or give a one-time gift, visit endtime.com or call 1-800-END-TIME right now. That's 800-363-8463. Go online now. Visit endtime.com.
One more statement that Emmanuel Macron gave in his United Nations General Assembly speech yesterday. He goes through all the 5 points in his speech, and then he says, those are the 5 principles on which France wants to rebuild with you, he's talking with the United Nations, the foundations of the international order. So they're not even really trying to hide what they're doing. He's saying, hey, we want a sustainable world order, and we want to rebuild the world order because there's a President Trump, there's a United States, and he's kind of pulled us away from that. It's not like it used to be. We want to rebuild a sustainable world order. Here's the 5 principles that we have, and let's work towards that sustainable world order, this world government that we all want. They're talking about it. Not trying to hide anything. We want a world government. And so What's the prophecies say? Just prior to the second coming of Jesus Christ, there will be a world government that runs the entire planet, and it's going to come out of the European Union. Now, some people would say, well, hey, Emmanuel Macron has got to be the Antichrist. Look at the speech he just gave. Well, there's many of them that give speeches on the world government, a lot of different things that I could go over. But is it Emmanuel Macron? I don't know at this point. If I had a top 10 list, he definitely would be on that list because of the things he said. He is a globalist. But there's a lot of Europeans that are globalist. Everybody that runs the parliament in Brussels, they're globalists. They believe Europe is the model of world government in the earth. So it's hard to tell who the Antichrist is at this point, but Emmanuel Macron would be one of the leaders if we had to choose one, a candidate at least. Okay, so let me shift gears and go to California. Folks, what happened to California? Can somebody explain that to me? They are so liberal. It's almost like you have the United States, and then you have New York, and then you have California. I mean, what happened? It's so liberal. And so what's going on? What am I talking about? Well, Breitbart reported, and there's news sources everywhere. California's Gavin Newsom, he bans gas-powered engines, gas-powered vehicles, effective in the year 2035. California Governor Gavin Newsom announced that the state of California will ban the sales of gas-powered vehicles in the year 2035. Newsom said that the audacious goal was necessary to achieve the state's goal of 100% renewable energy by 2045. So he's bought into the United Nations propaganda of global warming, human-induced global warming, which leads to climate change. He's bought in lock, stock, and barrel. He's a globalist. Anybody who buys into that and is pushing it, globalist, because that's what the United Nations propaganda is all about. Newsom said that his new executive order would eliminate the sales of internal combustion engines and move to electric vehicles, a move that he said would create jobs. But look how many jobs that's going to eliminate. And he said it would allow California to dominate the market and address climate change. Everything he's saying here is based on a lie, on a hoax. Human-induced global warming, which leads to climate change. There's no such hoax, everybody. I mean, there's no such thing as human-induced global warming, which leads to climate change. It's all propaganda. It's all false. And 2035, the year 2035, just happens to be the same year that Joe Biden has set as a deadline for the United States to eliminate fossil fuels from electricity production. Imagine how many hundreds of thousands of jobs that they would eliminate by shutting down all the coal-fired power plants, all the coal miners, all of the jobs, when it really has nothing to do with the human-induced global warming, which leads to climate change. It's all propaganda. But that's what Joe Biden's wanting to do. And 5 years later, then originally proposed by Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. She's a Democrat in New York. Most of you know her, in her Green Deal. Ocasio-Cortez led the climate change panel, get this, on the Biden-Sanders Unity Task Force earlier this year. Say, Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders created a unity task force. Bernie Sanders is a Democratic socialist. Why would Joe Biden create a unity task force with him? Do you really need to ask that at this point? I mean, we kind of all know where a Joe Biden is. If you don't, you've got to do your research on the guy. And it's him and Donald Trump for the presidency of the United States November 3rd. I don't want to go into a global government. I don't want to go into Joe Biden's a globalist. I don't want to go into socialism here in the United States. But that's what we're looking at. plus many other issues in November 3rd election. And the article from Breitbart said that the entire Biden and Sanders created this task force earlier this year, and that Ocasio-Cortez was over the climate change aspect of that. So here's the deal, everybody. The entire global warming, climate change theory hinges on the premise that humans, through the emission of greenhouse gases, mainly CO2, that they are causing the temperature of the planet to rise. And as a result, the climate changes, which leads to all sorts of weather catastrophes. Get this, global warming, which leads to climate change, it leads to snowstorms, polar vortexes, drought, tornadoes, hurricanes, tsunamis, I mean, you name it. They want to say everything's climate change, human-induced, because we're burning coal-fired power plants. The global warming alarmists contend that the more CO2 humans emit into the atmosphere, the more the planet heats up, and they frantically warn that if it's not stopped, that we will destroy the planet. Well, wake up, everybody. Don't drink the Kool-Aid of this human-induced global warming, which leads to climate change hoax. God has been regulating the temperature of this planet for thousands of years. They want to take the God factor out. The very idea that a government entity can control the weather or the temperature of the planet by regulating the amount of CO2 that we emit into the atmosphere is absolutely preposterous. Think about this. We've talked about this before, but this is one of the best examples I could give you. During the medieval warming period, the Vikings sailed through waters that are now frozen solid. The Vikings took advantage of these ice-free seas to colonize Greenland and other outlying lands to the far north. Why? It was warmer back then than it is now. This was around 1000 AD. The climate was sufficiently warmer for the north of Newfoundland to support a Viking colony that came to be called Vinland because of the grapes and the wines that were produced there. Couldn't do that today, but very possible 1000 AD. And these areas, they're under ice today. So it provides absolute proof that it was warmer back then than it is now. Now think about this. There was no such thing as a coal-fired power plant back then. No such thing as carbon-emitting factories or gas-powered vehicles. No such, those people had never even dreamed of something like that at that point. But it was warmer then than it is now because of our coal-fired power plants, carbon-emitting factories, gas-powered vehicles, that humans are causing the earth to warm to the point that it's causing all these different things. It's a complete hoax. What's the conclusion? Well, global warming was not man-made then. It was warmer then than it is now. It wasn't man-made then, and it's not man-made now. This is all United Nations propaganda to scare you into yielding your freedoms and your sovereignty to their evil plot, their blueprint to manage the planet. Because they say, hey, the world government needs to manage this situation. It's a borderless emergency, and we need a global government to manage it. Now, this is not sensationalism. I don't have to blow this up just for a radio talking point. It's not sensationalism, nor is it conspiracy theory. There are places you can go on the web, all of the major news sources that would say, oh, that's conspiracy theory. No, this is not conspiracy theory. once you understand that there is a communist, socialist communist agenda that's driving the mechanics of the United Nations, it's easy to see how the global elites have been able to work from within the United Nations to quietly build this world government. A socialist world government is the goal, and promoting the belief in global warming is one of the #1 vehicles to reach that goal. They have to keep you in fear mode, everybody. Now, why do I say that? Because one of the core beliefs is of socialism, one of the major planks of socialism is that most conflict in society stems from an ever-broadening gap between the wealthy and the poor. And the contention is that the wealthy are the ruling class and will inevitably use their economic power to enforce their will upon the less fortunate. It's in the news every day. That's why a lot of people are proponents of socialism. The ultimate socialist solution to this problem, that's why they want you to buy into that mentality. The rich are against the poor, and you understand? Which is a hoax. If we didn't have rich people, there would be no jobs in this country. We need rich people that have businesses, that have taken risks, that will provide jobs for people in this country. So they say the solution to this problem is to abolish private property ownership, for the state to own all the principal means of production, with the central government reestablishing wealth evenly among the masses. Now, they're not going to come right out in the news and tell you that. They're going to come up with all these schemes that say, hey, we've got to shut down coal-fired power plants, go to total wind power and solar power and all these other things, and we got to, it's a redistribution of wealth. The result would be a classless, communistic society where a global government would ensure equality for all citizens. There are people in our government that would love to see that happen. They've been trying to do it for decades now. And it would be impossible to fully realize the dream of this communistic one-world government without the redistribution of wealth from the developed nations to the poor, underdeveloped nations of the world. The Paris Climate Agreement was all about the redistribution of wealth. The Sustainable Development Goals, much of that is about the redistribution of wealth. They're all socialistic schemes. So this is the main goal of the global warming and climate change hoax. The United Nations elites know that a perpetual global life-threatening crisis is necessary to convince wealthy nations to accept the punitive cost of these cap-and-trade taxes and other wealth redistribution schemes. Wealth redistribution is exactly what carbon cap-and-trade laws are designed to accomplish. The government sets a cap on the amount of carbon emissions that an industrialized nation can emit, and if the limit is exceeded, carbon credits can be purchased from these underdeveloped nations who have more credits than they need. Now, remember, CO2 emissions have nothing to do with global warming. Global warming fear-mongering is simply a scheme put together by global elites to redistribute the wealth of the world and to move us into a world government. And I want you to think about this, and I want to go through some of these really slow because I want you to get this. I want this to sink in because you've got people like President Obama. During the Obama administration, he said 97% of the scientists agree that human-induced global warming leads to climate change. You heard him say that? That's actually not true. There are world-renowned scientists, physicists, environmental physical chemists, hydrologists, geologists, and others that all agree this is a hoax. I'm talking about world-renowned people at the height of their field, the top in their field, that say it's not true. William Happer, many of you may have heard of him. He's a Princeton University physicist, former director of energy research at the Department of Energy. And he said, I had the privilege of being fired by Al Gore since I refused to go along with his alarmism, his global warming alarmism. I have spent a long research career studying physics that is closely related to the greenhouse effect. And fears about man-made global warming are unwarranted and are not based on good science. The Earth's climate is changing now, as it always has. It's gotten warmer, it's gotten cooler over time. Consider the medieval warming period I just talked about with the Vikings. It was warmer back then than it is now. William Happer said there is no evidence that changes differ in any qualitative way from those in the past. It's always warmed up, cooled down. But you know why? Because God has a way of keeping the earth in store. God developed a way for the oceans to consume heat and cool and the earth. If stuff happens so bad something's got to blow up, you got a volcano. I mean, there's ways of the earth to let off steam. Think about Old Faithful in Yellowstone National Park. Lets off steam about every hour. Many of you have probably already been up there seen that. This earth has a way of heating itself up and cooling itself down. God created this earth thousands of years ago to do just that. But yet we think we get here in 2020 and we've got to listen to a few scientists from the United Nations spread this propaganda and this hoax that humans, because of their factories and a few automobiles, are heating the planet up to where we're causing tornadoes.
Move Mountains with Irvin Baxter. This book by Irvin's grandson provides 30 days of devotion that will enhance your relationship with God and others. Authentic illustrations from early morning devotions at Endtime will help you find your purpose and eliminate fears. Commit to taking this 30-day journey and experience real life change. Get your book for only $14.99. Call 1-800-363-8463 or go to endtime.com/move.
I have left a piece of my heart in Israel and her people. We would like to thank Endtime for doing such an awesome job with our Israel tour. We marvel at your team keeping the time schedule, keeping everyone comfortable, the wonderful driver, the brilliant guide, the entire tour program, good hotel choices, and stellar food. We had the privilege to rub shoulders with Pastor Baxter, listen to his current teachings, and had some interesting questions answered so eloquently. He is wonderful. Helene from Australia.
Experience the Holy Land in the most amazing way. Join Irvin and Judy Baxter for our upcoming Israel tour. For more information, go to endtime.com or call 1-800-ENDTIME. That's 1-800-363-8463.
If your station only carries the first 30 minutes of End of the Age, go to endtime.com and click the watch button to continue today's broadcast. You can also finish up later by clicking the archive button.
Have I convinced you yet that the human-induced global warming leads to climate change, that it's a hoax? I mean, these are efforts for the world government working in the earth, trying to establish their world governing body. They need you and me to be afraid of everything that happens. They want when a hurricane happens down here in Houston or Louisiana, they want to be able to blame that on the population of the world for having coal-fired power plants. And they say, we're causing this, so we can't manage the world. We're not making the right decisions, so we need a world government to make these decisions for us. That's what this is all boiling down to. And the Bible says, Revelation chapter 13, 2, that Satan's the driver behind all of this. And that's easy to see. This is all based on a lie. Satan is the father of all liars. The Bible says the truth cannot be found in him. He's trying to build his physical kingdom here on the earth. It's built on a lie. A couple more proofs, a couple more scientists. Some of you may have heard of Dennis Hollers. He's an astrophysicist. He said, what I do with the International Panel on Climate Change report, which is the United Nations, what I'd do with their report is I'd put it in the trash, because that's what it's all worth. Carbon dioxide was an insignificant component of the Earth's atmosphere, and that rather than being the purveyor of doom, it is currently viewed as today, it needs to be we need it in order for plants to grow. And think about this. Mars's atmosphere is 95%. They're saying that CO2 is, we're putting off enough CO2, these carbon emissions, to heat our planet up to where we're going to destroy it, right? The planet Mars's atmosphere is 95% CO2 and has no global warming. This is all based on a hoax. Chris Landsea, he's a former United Nations International Panel on Climate Change scientist. He's not anymore because he got tired of the propaganda. He said, I personally cannot in good faith continue to contribute to the International Panel on Climate Change process that I view as both being motivated by preconceived agendas and being scientifically unsound. He worked for the United Nations, and he said, this is so bad, I can't do this anymore, and he quit. And then finally, two more. Jack Schmidt. He's a geology scientist, and he's a U.S. astronaut. He said, as a geologist, I love Earth observations, but it is ridiculous to tie this objective to a consensus that humans are causing global warming when human experience, and he said geological data and history and current cooling can argue otherwise. It's a hoax. He said consensus, as many have said, merely represents the absence of definitive science. You know as well as I, the global warming scare is being used as a political tool to increase government control over American lives, incomes, and decision making. And then finally, Martin Herzberg. He's a retired U.S. Navy meteorologist. He said that not only is it false that human activity has any significant effect on global warming or the weather in general, but for the record, global warming is over. The fear-mongering hysteria about human-caused global warming is completely unjustified and is totally counterproductive to our nation's essential needs and security. So, folks, don't drink the Kool-Aid. The United Nations global warming climate change propaganda is nothing more than the ongoing fulfillment of the 2,000-year-old prophesied world government eventually ruled by the Antichrist. Many people in the United States have drank that Kool-Aid, and that's why you wonder out in California. I mean, banning the sale of all gas-powered vehicles? That's insane. You wonder why there's so many conservative news sources and people leaving. We've got people I talked to somebody at our church this Sunday who left California. He was a policeman in California, and he said, I couldn't survive out there anymore. I just felt like I couldn't function as a free-thinking individual because the government would just thumb down on everybody. Ben Shapiro, he's decided to leave. He's a conservative radio talk show host. He's decided to leave. He's going to land in Nashville, Tennessee, because he said, I can't do California anymore. And so I just want everybody to be aware that there are people who are globalists that believe in this world government, and they're pushing the propaganda of human-induced global warming, coal-fired power plants. gas-powered engines, things like that, that lead to global warming, which then in turn leads to climate change, tsunamis, hurricanes, tornadoes, and all that. That is a lie. It's based on a hoax, and it's easily proven. So don't drink the Kool-Aid on this world government stuff. It's a total hoax. Then, the Jerusalem Post reported that Tony Blair, many of you recognize that name, that he said, he made the statement, Israel-Palestinian peace will come through the ties with the Arab states. Now, Irvin Baxter and myself talked about President Trump's efforts to go in and rather than, like all the previous administrations have done, go in and get a peace deal done between the Palestinians and the Israelis, and to drag them by a nose ring to the negotiating table and force them to sign a peace agreement, President Trump said it's not going to happen. So what's he do? He goes in and says, not going to get it done that way, I'm going to go a different route. So he goes in and starts working with all the Arab nations and thought, hey, if I can get all these Arab nations on board, they'll bring the Palestinians along with them. So we've been talking about this for a few years now, since President Trump got in office and his first trip overseas was to Saudi Arabia. We said, you know what? He's starting this regional, he's going to do this regional peace agreement and bring the Palestinians to the table. Former British Prime Minister Tony Blair said that, he just said at the Jerusalem Post annual conference, he said this, and I'm quoting, the foundation of the approach in the region that Israelis and Palestinians negotiate peace and then the rest of the region joins is the diametric opposite of what should happen. It goes right along with what President Trump's been doing. He said, actually, what you need to do is create peace between Israel and this regional agreement, this Arab nations, and then include the Palestinian issue in that peace. That's what's going on. Former Prime Minister Tony Blair knows that. That's exactly what President Trump and his team have been doing. And he's saying, as a result of this, the Palestinian Israelis will end up signing a deal. It appears that from all we can tell, that it looks like that's going to happen, and we're watching it. And once the Israelis and the Palestinians sign a peace agreement, that could be the one that starts the final 7 years. We'll have to watch how it all plays out, but we could be watching this whole process come together. Of course, Tony Blair, he's now the chairman of the Tony Blair Institute for Global Change. He was a guest at the White House last week during the Abraham Accords signing. And he enthusiastically touted the agreements. He's all in because he said this as well. He said they are a goal that he has actually worked toward for many years. He said, in the end, I think it's the best way to resolve the Palestinian issue fairly and justly. Now remember, it's going to, the peace agreement that starts the final 7 years will be between Israel and the Palestinians. This is what the Arabs are talking about. This is what Israel's talking about. The United States, Europe, the international community is that, hey, all these agreements are good and we will agree with all them, but you're going to have to get something done with Israel and the Palestinians. That's what Scripture says. So we know it's going to come down to that. But he said that, hey, this is a way to get it done. He said, and the Arab world still supports the Palestinian cause, but much of it has come to the conclusion that it's unreasonable to expect them constantly to sacrifice their own interest, the Arab interest as a whole, to the Palestinians. That's what Tony Blair said. In other words, many of them are getting tired of dealing with the Palestinian and what's going on here. They've been supporting them with finances, and these all want to normalize relations with Israel and have peace agreements. But the Palestinians, they've kind of tied their hands for years because of the Arab initiative that said, no, unless the Palestinians and the Israelis sign a peace agreement, then none of us can. Well, then the United Arab Emirates said, we're done with that. We're going to go ahead and sign. That's what President Trump knew would happen. And it looks like, it appears that it will bring the Palestinians in before all this is over with. In the 12 years since Tony Blair left office and focused on the Middle East matters, he has visited Israel, the United Arab Emirates, and other Arab states approximately 250 times. So a lot has went into making these regional agreements. And then, of course, President Trump comes along and closes the deals. And then the Jerusalem Post, there's huge shaking going on in the Middle East. The Jerusalem Post reported that the Palestinian funding from these other Arab countries has dropped 85% this year. Now think about that. Think about your budget dropping 85% from the Arab. Now, Europe gives them funds and things like that, but I'm talking about from your Arab brethren right there in the Middle East with you, your funding dropping 85%. I'm talking about tens of millions of dollars. And they say that the financial situation happened amid the coronavirus pandemic, yes, but also during the period when normalization agreements, strongly opposed by the Palestinians, were being negotiated between several of these Gulf states and Israel, and it was obviously strongly backed by the United States. And they're saying that there are more nations that could come on very, very, very soon, actually within days now. We don't know who it is, but there is speculation that even from Kelly Craft, our ambassador to the United Nations, she's saying just within days we could have more nations sign on to this. So you can see that there are world leaders, not just President Trump, but there are other world leaders that have been working on this as well. And it appears that this could lead to a Palestinian-Israeli agreement. Now, there's world government. There's a Middle East peace update, really quick. And now I'm going to go to something that President Trump is doing. The CNN News reported that President Trump has announced he'll sign a Born Alive executive order to ensure babies surviving abortion receive medical care. He was addressing the 16th annual National Catholic Prayer Breakfast, and President Donald Trump announced that he will be signing an executive order to ensure that babies who are born alive. You understand infanticide? Okay, so I want to make sure y'all get this. I don't want to cut this in half. But we're talking about abortion. We're talking about an issue that could be decided because of the Supreme Court nominee and the next presidential election. Many of these things could be decided and possibly overturned during a next 4-year term, depending on who gets elected. So is this next election crucial? You better believe it is.
Most of us walk around day by day blind to the prophecies being fulfilled right before us. Every news report brings a new piece to the puzzle in the race towards the final 7 years and the second coming of Jesus Christ. Now, more than ever, it is important for God's people to understand the times in which we are living. On November the 12th, 2013, we opened our Jerusalem Prophecy College in downtown Jerusalem. These same courses are now available online for people who are unable to attend the classes in person. We welcome students to join us and discover the link between current events and the prophecies of the Bible. Take your place in the prophecy of Daniel 11:33. Enroll in the Jerusalem Prophecy College today. Go to JerusalemProphecyCollege.com.
You know, I talked about abortion on, what would it have been, Tuesday, and I got very emotional because I read a very graphic, in detail description of a partial birth abortion. And I almost got physically sick on the air. I was looking for the trash can because the idea of an abortion or a partial birth abortion, any kind of that stuff, it just goes through me. I can't take that, okay? Well, when I saw that President Trump was going to sign an executive order to ensure that babies are born alive and that you understand infanticide, babies born alive, and They leave it laying there. The mother and the doctor will decide, hey, yeah, I want to keep that or no. And the baby's laying there alive. President Trump's going to sign this executive order to ensure that babies who are born alive, even if they are survivors of a botched abortion, because many of them, they let them lay there and just wiggle and do whatever until they pass away. don't want to comprehend it. But it says that they will be given these babies, regardless, if they're born alive, even a botched abortion, they'll be given proper medical attention. They will not be left to die. Now, this is President Trump, everybody. President Trump promised to always defend the sacred right to life and always protect the vital role of religion and prayer in American society. So the right to life, in other words, the life of that baby is not the mother. The mother has the right to do whatever she wants to with her body. If she wanted to cut her foot off, she got the right to go do that. But the life inside her is not the mother. Now, I know we can go back and forth on that. There's people that would argue that. No, that is the mother. No. You got two heartbeats. You got two minds, two brains, two lives. When does it become okay to take another person's life? That's what you have to ask. Then you get into when does life begin? When does life begin at conception, or so far along the baby? No. I'm saying that another life. Can't take that. God hates the shedding of innocent blood. Proverbs. We could get into the whole. I did that on Tuesday. I'm not going to go through all that again. But I was almost shouting in my office when I saw that President Trump declared his intention to sign a born-again executive order to protect all precious babies born alive. He said, today, I'm announcing that I will be signing the Born Alive executive order to ensure that all precious babies born alive, no matter their circumstances, if they've got a cleft palate and the mother doesn't want it, no, you can't kill that baby. No. Or it's born with one arm. I'm going to have to take care of that. I don't want that baby. No. He said no matter what the circumstances, it's going to receive medical care that they deserve. He said this is our sacrosanct moral duty. The political push to provide additional protections for babies born alive intensified following Democrat Virginia Governor Ralph Northam's on-air comments. You remember, I mentioned them, suggesting that a decision to deny medical care to babies can be made after they are born. The Daily Signal reported that legislation called the Born Again Alive Abortion Survivors Protection Act would include criminal consequences for health care providers who violate the 2002 law. It also would require that proper medical care be given by the health care practitioner present if an infant is born alive. The proposal, again, it emerged after Virginia Governor Ralph Northam, a Democrat, suggested in a live radio interview that in some circumstances, mothers and doctors should be able to deny medical care to a living human being. I want to stress that. This is not a lump of tissue laying there. This is a living human being that God created, a little boy, a little girl, not a lump of tissue, and that they could not deny medical care to newborns who survive an abortion. Governor Northam made the comment during an interview last year when NBC Washington's Julie Carey asked Northam whether he supported a bill proposed by, you remember, Virginia Delegate Kathy Trans, she was a Democrat as well, which would allow abortions up to the moment of birth. Well, he responded, Northam did, Governor Northam, said that a baby born could be born alive, okay, so it comes out of the mother, kept comfortable, and then resuscitated if that's what the mother and the family desired. The implication being that the baby could be left to die if the family decided they did not want to keep their child. President Trump is going to sign an executive order, the Born Alive executive order, to protect that child's life, and the doctor would have to keep that child alive at all costs, regardless of the circumstances. Thank you, President Trump. Regardless, I don't care if you're Republican, Democrat, or you don't vote, or you're libertarian, whatever. I'm applauding that. Thank you, President Trump. We're talking about babies here, folks. And so, man, it's so important in God's eyes. That's number one. What does God think? What does the Bible say? And then, all of us, what's our opinion? And if you've ever had a child or a grandchild, and you look at that baby in the face and then talk about this, come on. I mean, this, and think about it. This is one of the major decisions that we're facing in the next election. Pro-life versus pro-abortion and anti-life. I mean, we've got, we're talking about this Supreme Court nominee that could turn the tables and possibly overturn Roe v. Wade. If this next Supreme Court nominee is confirmed and the vote was held again, and it was a 5-4, 5 conservative, 4 liberal vote, we could overturn Roe v. Wade. Imagine that. Roe v. Wade since 1973. There's been, what, well over 60 million abortions? Those are the ones that are on the books. Those are the ones we know of or that have been recorded. 60 million, folks. So, these Supreme Court justices spend the rest of their life on the court. So if we could get Roe v. Wade overturned, and this would last for decades, hopefully. And so what a chance we have right now. We've got to take advantage of this. We've got to be in prayer that President Trump will get a conservative member on the Security Council confirmed, a next Supreme Court justice, and that we could, while we have the White House, while we have the Senate, that we could get it confirmed and we could overturn Roe v. Wade and get abortion illegal in the United States of America. What a day that would be. And possibly overturn in the next 4 years, maybe, the legalization of same-sex marriage in all 50 states. You say, well, you're discriminating. I'm not discriminating. I live in a country where we were founded on Judeo-Christian principles. I want to live in a country like that. I don't want to live in a country where these different agendas are being pushed that are anti-God. Don't want that. And so it's a whole discussion we could get into, and I'm not going to get into it with the short time I have left. Another decision that could be made November 3rd. There's so many huge, weighty decisions, issues that are coming up November 3rd. School choice. According to Fox News, President Trump called school choice the civil rights issue of all time in this country. The Trump administration has long advocated school choice, arguing that it would allow residents in lower income communities the opportunity to send their children to higher caliber schools than those offered by their district. According to Town Hall, on the other side, you have Joe Biden. The powerful teachers' unions have endorsed Joe Biden because they feel confident that he will continue to support a monolithic public school system that has underperformed for millions and contributed heavily to the racial disparities that fuel current urban arrests. The unions incessantly call for more investment into the schools that have failed, and failed not for the lack of funds, but from an institutional culture that is broken. instead of supporting educational diversity and pluralism, as well as families who can't really afford to pay private school tuition or move to better school districts, the unions want to shut down these initiatives like vouchers and educational savings accounts. And nowhere in Joe Biden's campaign unity platform do the words school choice appear. But it's even worse than that. The document calls for ending the Opportunity Scholarship Program. This program is in which about 80% of the participating children are black, allows the use of school vouchers at private schools. Why not give everybody an opportunity? Why not? It doesn't matter. Forget the color. Give everybody the opportunity at a private school. Why not? Give them a school voucher and say, choose your school. It doesn't matter what color you are, what race you are, where you come from, what your address is. Choose your own private school. Here's a voucher. That's what President Trump wants to do. Joe Biden does not want to do that. The campaign recently issued a statement saying Joe Biden opposes the Trump-Betsy DeVos conception of school choice, which is private school vouchers. So, do we have some weighty issues coming up on November 3rd? Better believe we do. President Trump's second-term agenda promises to provide school choice to every child in America. Can you imagine getting that passed? And just like we got a COVID-19 check to help everybody out during the coronavirus situation. I can't remember what me and my wife got, I don't know, $1,200, $1,300, $1,400, something like that. It was pretty nice, wasn't it? Well, imagine all you families that have a child in school, regardless of, take color out of it. God doesn't see color, I don't see color, and I don't want my government seeing color. I don't want anybody seeing color. Take color out of it, take race out of it. Doesn't matter where you live, what your background is. Wouldn't you like to get a voucher from the government that says, hey, here's X amount of dollars, go choose a private school? Be awesome, wouldn't it? That's what President Trump's for. There's some very weighty issues. This could be one of the things that turns America around, folks. Imagine your child being taught creation and not evolution, being taught that climate change was a hoax, or that we don't want socialism here in America. Imagine your child being taught those things in school and not an indoctrination from the government. Be awesome, wouldn't it? School choice will be on the ballot in November.
This has been End of the Age, brought to you by the faithful partners of Endtime Ministries. If you're not currently a partner with Endtime Ministries, or if you would like more information, we invite you to call us at 1-800-ENDTIME. That's 1-800-363-8463, or visit us online at endtime.com.
Thank you for watching. If you liked this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel and like our Facebook page.